Hi, this is Nataraj. In this video, I will show you how to use Azure Function to build a Canvas app that does one thing, that is just to take a screenshot of any arbitrary site. So this is a contrived example, but what I wanted to demonstrate in this video is how you can connect um, a Canvas app to an Azure Functions, and not just any Azure function. This Azure function is actually something that is running on a Docker container um, in Azure Container Registry. So there are a lot of moving parts on this particular solution. So in order to first show the end, it will be a lot easier if I just show the end result rather than just like going through all the jargons and terminologies, because it might sound too intimidating when I say that it's got Docker, it's got like Azure functions. So rather than just focus on all the moving parts, let's go into the end result. So this is an app. This is a Canvas app, and this Canvas app's got two controls. One is a text box that is just a URL that you need to enter, and below that you have an image which is basically the screenshot of that particular site. So if I just change the URL to youtube.com and then click this button called capture, what it is doing behind the scenes is calling an Azure function, and this Azure function is actually running a package called Playwright. And Playwright is something very similar to Selenium. It is a browser automation tool that you can say that uh, it's something that opens up the browser without any user interaction, loads up the page. You probably can potentially also click some links, and you can do a whole lot of things that you manually do. And one of the things that usually when people try to demonstrate this is they just show taking a screenshot. So I'm sticking with the same. This is the hello world of like browser automation tools. So this is a simple thing. It's easy to understand. So this one is doing is it takes a screenshot of youtube.com, and I can see the screenshot on my Canvas app. So now let us try to deconstruct this application and go through the pieces one by one. So first, I will actually show you how to create the function app to do the screenshot. The first thing you need to do is to install the Azure Functions core tools. This is a package for Npm, so you need to have Node installed on your machine, and also when you install Node, you would also have Npm installed. So let me just check first the version of Node I have. So in command line, I'll go and type node-v. So the version of Node I have is 12.14.1. So I can install this most recent one, that is v3, because if you have v2, I think v2, I could potentially install v2 as well, but because I have a recent version of Node, I'm going to install the v3 of Core Tools. So I'm just going to copy paste this package. So I'll put the link on the description as well. So I'm going to copy paste. So it's npm install, it's -g is global. So I'm going to install version 3 of the Core Tools. So let me just run this, and it's going to start installing the package. Okay, after a long time, it has now finished installing. So now we are able to use the command line tools for Azure Functions. So after installing the core tools, the first command we're going to type is to create the function. So I just type func, and I say init, and then --docker. So this means I'm going to specify that this function is going to be deployed on Docker container. So I'm going to choose node. So I'm actually using my up and down arrow. I'm just choosing down arrow, and I'm just selecting node, press enter. I'm going to I'm going to write it in TypeScript. So once again, I press down arrow, enter again. So now it has actually created the initial step. So it's a function app is now created. So the function app is created. Next step is to actually create the function. So I'm going to say func new. So within the function app, you can create multiple functions. So I'm going to create, once again, I'm pressing down arrow, HTTP trigger. And what is the name of the function? I am going to say, and the name of the function is take screenshot. Okay, it has created the function. So next step is, because this is a node app, I always need to do npm install. So I can, once I do npm install, all the necessary dependencies should be installed. So it's installing all the dependencies. All the dependencies have been installed. Let me just now open this function in code. So I press code dot. So now I am in the source code that was created, like the function that was created. Let me just inspect the package.json. So in the package.json, I can see there are multiple commands. So first step is I need to build this code. So I can just expand this npm scripts area on VS Code, and then I can press the build. What it is doing is just running TSC. So that is a TypeScript compiler. Because this function app is actually written in TypeScript, it needs to be compiled into JavaScript before it can be run. If you write it in JavaScript itself, there is no compilation step, but because I chose this function app as a TypeScript app, I have to first compile it into JavaScript. So the TypeScript compilation is complete. So I can confirm that by going to distribution. So I can see there is a index.js. So next step, I can also type like function.start and run the host runtime, or I can just click on this, like, the npm scripts. So I click this start host. So now it is going to run the exact same command, that is func start. So this is something you get after running the core tools, the ability to develop the function app locally. So it's going to start running the function in a sandbox or container sandbox kind of environment, and I can test everything on my local machine. So now it is giving me an URL. So let me just go into this URL, localhost 7071. So I go into localhost 7071, take screenshot. So now it's saying pass a name or query string. That is because this is just the default app. Let me just go and check the source code for this. So this is just the boilerplate. So the boilerplate says that I need a parameter called name either on the query, either on the URL if it is a GET request, or on the body of the request if it is a post. So I can also confirm this by going into the function.json. So there are two methods that are supported, get or post. So because I'm doing a URL that is using get request, but there is a validation that says a name parameter is required. So let me just first try to pass a name parameter. So I'm going to say name equal to Natraj. So now it says hello Natraj. Okay, so the function app is actually working. So we have confirmed that. So now it is time to install some packages so that we can do the browser automation. So the package for that is Playwright. So I just type npm I Playwright, and then I'm just going to save the thing, save the package. So it should start installing now. Okay, it has now finished installing Playwright. So what it has done is it has also downloaded 3 browsers, Chromium, Firefox, and WebKit. This is the difference between Playwright and Puppeteer, because Puppeteer is specifically for Chrome and Playwright supports all the 3 browsers. So now let's try to build the solution again, see whether it actually works after we install the packages. Okay, there is no compilation error, but we are not even using the package at this stage. So that's not very surprising to me. So I will just copy paste some code into this index.txt and then let's try to compile it again. Okay, so this is the code I copy pasted. So what this particular code is doing is use the Playwright package and then I have changed the query URL query parameter to URL instead of name, and then in this line I just want to launch Chromium browser with the specific flags because I am going to run this inside a container, so I specify these flags so that this for security. Otherwise, it'll have some issues running as a uh, I think it, yeah. Otherwise, you would run as a lesser privileged user. So, since this is something that I am going to use to just take screenshots, I don't really want to dive into that level of restriction in terms of which user is going to run this Chromium process. So I am going to run Chromium with these two flags set. And then once the browser is, I just open up a new tab, and then in the tab, I'm just going to load the URL. So it's pretty self-explanatory. And once the screenshot is saved, I am going to serve that image in the response so that you can actually see the image on the when the function executes, you can actually see the image, the screenshot image. So let's try to build it now. I am clicking the build on the npm scripts area. So let's see what happens when I try to compile this. I have installed the Playwright package and the code, there is no squiggly lines. Let's see what happens. All right, it didn't compile. Whole bunch of errors. So first thing it says, cannot find definition files for node. Okay, so let's go into package.json. If I go into package.json, I have the type for Azure. There is no type files at all. So let's try to install the type for node. So I just say npm, I say install add types node, and then I'm going to run it as a, I'm going to make that as a development dependency. So let's run this. Okay, I have the types for node. Let's try to run build again. Okay, the build failed again this time around. It says cannot find the type definition file for debug. Okay, so it seems to be another type. So I need to install the type for debug as well. Okay, the type is now installed. Let me try to run the build again. So this time around, it should succeed. Okay, the build is now successful. I can go into the index.js, confirm that the source code looks very similar to the TypeScript. So this means the build is successful. So the next step is to run this particular function app on your local machine. Okay, in order to run this function app on my local machine, I'm going to do the same thing I did the last time around to confirm that the function can run. Click the start host task, the npm task, start host. So I click that play button. So it is doing func start, whole bunch of initialization steps. And now I get this URL again, localhost 7071 API screenshot. So let's go into this time around. If I try to use the same URL, name Natraj, it shouldn't succeed because now, because we have changed we've changed the URL to, we've changed the parameter to URL. So I should be passing URL, and in the URL, I should pass a site, the site URL. So I'm going to say http://microsoft.com. Okay, so the function app is rendering this screenshot locally. So we have confirmed that the function is working as expected on a local function environment. So after confirming the function is working on the local environment, we can now take the steps to get it ready for Docker. So before that, let me make some changes. So first, on the function.json, change the auth level to anonymous, because we don't have any function key. So if you're testing it in Docker, let's make it anonymous first, so that we don't. I had some issues when I actually tested with the function key, so I will change it back to function after I deploy it. But uh, when I test it locally on my Docker container, I am going to set the auth level to anonymous. So I'm going to make that change. And another thing is method. So now this method, this particular function allows both get as well as post. So I am going to remove the post method because the URL is actually passed as a the site to take a screenshot. That particular parameter is actually passed as a URL parameter, so I don't need a post, so I'm just going to remove that. And second thing, I'm going to go into my Docker ignore and I'm going to add the node modules, because I don't want my node modules to be built packaged up on the Docker container, because it's going to do an npm install anyway. So I will do that. And the next step is the Docker file. So this is the default Docker file that the functions runtime, the CLI generate. So I am going to paste in some Docker config Docker file that I already have. I'm going to downgrade the node environment to 2.0. So, and these are a whole bunch of dependencies that need to be installed for running Chromium. So this particular list of dependencies, I got it from the Puppeteer GitHub repository, and I have success with this particular list because there are two distinct lists. One is the one that you can find on Playwright, and there's another list that you can find on Puppeteer. So this is the list that work for me. So I'm just using this, and since you don't need to type it up manually because I'm going to publish the whole repo anyway, so you can just use the same Docker file. So now I have done both the changes. So next step is to build this particular project on Docker. Okay, now after you have made the changes to the Docker file, now we need to actually build the Docker container. So in order for that, I am actually using Windows. So I downloaded the Docker desktop for Windows. So if you're using a Mac, just download the correct version for it. So I just go to this site, just Google, pretty much if you just Google Docker desktop, you'll land up on this site, and from there you should be able to, I just download the stable channel. So uh, with this one, you should be able to just download and install the Docker desktop application. It takes probably 15 to 20 minutes to install and start up. So get that done first. Start the application, and then you should be able to run the commands to build the Docker container. After installing the Docker desktop, just check on your um, taskbar on the right hand side where you see all the volume icons and Wi-Fi and everything. So just confirm that Docker desktop is actually running, and after if it is running and you type this command docker on your command line, you should be able to get some help menu. So now Docker is running. So let me just build the containers. Docker build and then tag. So I'm going to use my Docker Hub ID, and then I'm going to call this container take screenshot, and then it's v1.0.0, and the Docker file is actually on the same path. So I'm going to start running that. It's going to start building the container. It takes some time for it to pull all the packages from the repository and then build the container. So It should take 15 minutes, I think 10 to 15 minutes. So I'm going to pause the video while it is building it. Okay, so the container is now finished running. Took approximately 10 minutes to build it. So let me just first confirm that the container is there on my local machine. So Docker image ls. So I can see here that my new container is actually there, version 1.0. Now it's time to run the container. I'm going to map the port 8080 on my local machine to the port 80 on the container, and I'm going to run this image, take screenshot. Okay, so I forgot to put in a tag, otherwise it's going to take the latest one. So I'm just going to type this tag v1.0.0 because that's what the tag is on the Docker image ls. So now it's going to kick off this. It's going to instantiate sort of in object-oriented terms. Okay, started running. So now it is listening on port 80. So I can now open up the same function app that is running on the Docker container in the browser. So the Docker container is now running. So let me just type up. So it says it's listening on port 80. So that's the container port. But the local machine port is 8080 because that's what it means. So this is Docker run map 8080 to port 80. So I need to map. I'm just going to type up this address localhost 8080, and then I have API screenshot. So where did I get the API screenshot from? That's here. It says map function route API text screenshot. So I'm going to run that first or something. Yeah. So it's run. So it's now it says pass a URL. All right. Okay. Pass a URL. So I'm going to say URL http powerapps.microsoft.com. All right. The screenshot is now loaded. So let me just go to my Docker command prompt. So you can see on the Docker command prompt, I put in some diagnostic messages for Playwright. So there, you can see on the command line that there are some Playwright messages. So that is being displayed because I have this property set dump pivot true. So that's why you're able to see it. So now I have confirmed that I can run a function on a Docker container. So now it's time to deploy this container into Azure Container Registry. It is now time to create the Azure Container Registry resource. So I have now navigated to portal.azure.com. I'm going to click on create a new resource, search for container. So you have container registry. So this is Azure Container Registry. So I'm going to click create. Enter the name. I'm going to say YouTube ACR ACR. All right. So resource group. I'm going to create a new resource group. I just want it to be Australia Southeast. Admin user. I do want an admin user, so I'm going to keep the default. Click create. Alright, started provisioning the resources. I will pause the video till it finishes provisioning. Oh, I don't even have to pause it, so it's already provisioned. So go to resource. So let's check what are the different so first thing you need to check is this access key. So I need, if I want to push a container into Azure Container Registry, I need to copy this password. So let me just put this in clipboard. And now I have the registry name YouTube ACR, and if you click on quick start, it has some helpful commands. So for example, it says like this is a command. So because my container when I actually built the Docker container earlier, I was using my Docker Hub username. So if I have to tag it, like I can tag it for Azure Container Registry, so there are some commands here. So you can actually use that to instead of just starting with a blank slate or googling it. So this quick start area itself has got some helpful commands. So let's go into the command prompt and start building up the container and pushing it to Azure Container Registry. But first ensure that you have copied the password from the access keys area. Now let's try to log in into the Azure Container Registry from command line using the Docker. So I just need to copy this whole thing. Docker login youtube.acr dot azurecr.io. So first try to log in, and then it's asking me for username. So if I go into access keys, I can get the username and password. So username is youtube.acr. I'm gonna type that in. Password is this. Just copy to clipboard, pasting it in, and then enter. Login succeeded. All right. So in this quick start, you can see it says that it is tagging the image with this particular instead of I use my Docker Hub ID. So since I'm going to deploy this to Azure Container Registry, so this is sort of the prefix. So I will have to rebuild my image and use the same sort of tag. So what I'll do is I go to my history. So let me just find out what my history is. So Docker built. So what I have to do is I'm just gonna tag this as YouTube acr.azurecr.io and then just build it. So now it's built it. So let me just go into Docker image ls. So I can see two images. One is that one that we initially built to test on the local Docker, and the second one is the one that I'm going to push to Azure Container Registry. So now let's push this into the container registry. So I just have to type this command docker push. So docker push, and then I'm going to say youtube acr.azurecr.io /take screenshot. I'm going to push this version 1.0.0. So let's push this. So now it's going to push the whole image into the container registry. It's going to take 5 to 10 minutes. Wait for that to complete. The whole container has been pushed into Azure Container Registry. You can confirm this by going into the portal, go into your container registry, go into repositories. Now we can see that there is a new repository and it's got a tag v1.0. So this means it's actually deployed. So one thing I forgot to do is remember that I had to change the auth level to anonymous to test it locally. So when we are deploying this to when it is deploying to Azure portal, we don't want anyone to access this function. So let's change this back into function. So the authentication will be on the function key, and then we need to rebuild the container and redeploy the container. So I am going to rebuild this container as version 1.0.1, and I'm going to push a new version of it. So it's going to take pretty much the same time, 15 minutes approximately. So I will pause the video. Okay, I built the version 1.1, 1.0.1 of the container. So I have to do the same thing, push it into Azure Container Registry. So Docker push. So I have two versions. So same 635. Gonna take another 5 minutes. Okay, the new version has been pushed. So let me just go back into my container registry, refresh it. So now I see two versions, 1.0 that had the function as anonymous, and 1.0.1 where I brought back the function key. So next step is to actually create a function app. The container is deployed, so let me now create my function app. Function app, create. So I'm going to create a new resource group for this. I'd rather not use the existing one. So YouTube screenshot. All right. And my function app is called YouTube screenshot app. So I'm going to publish this Docker container, and then I'm going to say it's Australia Southeast, and next review and next hosting. So I'm going to keep the defaults, plan type premium. I'm just going to keep that. I can probably change that to app service plan. So I'm going to change that to app service plan. Everything else I'm going to keep it as default. Monitoring, yes, I want application insights. I don't want any tags. Review and create. Okay, now create the function app. So it's going to start provisioning. I'll wait for this to provision. So the resource is provisioned. So let me go into the resource. So when I click on the function app, I get this tab platform features. So on the platform features, or you also get this notification on the top. So I'm going to click container settings. In the container settings, I'm going to choose Azure Container Registry. So the registry should be visible here. So YouTube ACR, and the image that we want to use is take screenshot. The tag that we want to use 1.0.1. So that is the one I want to use. I want to also continuously deploy. So whenever I push a new version to the container registry, it should automatically update the function app. So I'm going to choose the settings, and I am going to save it. So once I save, you should start seeing some log messages. So you can already see it's already, starting to pull the container from the container registry. So let's wait for this to fully finish it. It's going to take another 5 to 10 minutes for this to finish. Now we can see that you are getting a whole bunch of messages on the log. So all I've been doing is just clicking on this refresh button just to be sure that something is happening. But I can see that the function app is already starting to see. It's saying pulling image. So it's already started to pull the image from the container registry, and because the image is actually quite huge, it's probably going to take some time. So in the meantime, right now the only way I could just figure out when this is finished running is by just clicking the refresh button every like 30 seconds. Okay, after several refreshes, now when I actually get this message, it says container is ready to serve requests. So at that point of time, what I can do is I can just go back into my function app, go into my functions. I should start seeing the function app on this area. So I see take screenshot, I click on it. All I want to do now is get function URL. So you can see that, so the API key is being used. I'm going to copy that. I'm going to paste this in a new window. So you can see that I authenticate using a code on the URL, and just like the local environment, I need to pass a parameter called URL so that it can take screenshots. So this time I want to say URL equal to http microsoft.com. So now it's going to run the function app that has been deployed, and if everything goes well, it should display. So it has already displayed the exact same screenshot. So I just can confirm. I'll just go to so first time around it's probably a little bit slow. Second time around, because the function is pre-warmed, it should be faster. So I just go to Google, probably a little bit slower. Yeah, so probably 3 to 5 seconds. So the function app is now running on a container, and it's using Playwright, and it's actually taking a screenshot, and it is responding with the PNG image. So all this is working. How do we use this function in a Canvas app or in a flow? So let's go through that next. Okay, now we have created the function app. So how do I use that function app in a flow, or how do you use this in a Canvas app? So now what I'm showing you is a flow that I've created. So the trigger on that flow is like it's not a HTTP trigger or anything. It's just a Power Apps trigger, and I capture the parameter called URL from the user in Power Apps, and then I directly call the function just using the code on the URL. And also this is there are two parameters on the, so you can see that this particular function app takes two parameters. One parameter is called code, where I need to pass the the authentication code, and then this is the parameter that is used by Playwright for taking screenshots. So I need two parameters, code and URL. So that's what this is, code and URL. URL is being mapped to the URL local variable, and this local variable is basically the input that the user has given on the Power App, the Canvas app. And then this function returns just a image. So I pass that whole image back to the calling Power App inside the image parameter. So this is a flow that will be used on a Canvas app. Okay, now we have created the flow. How do we use this flow on a Canvas app? So here is a simple Canvas app I built. It's just got only three controls. One control to call the flow. So if you click this capture, you can see on the on click, it is setting a variable called image variable, and that image variable is actually from a flow. So Power App URL HTTP, that's just a flow, and the parameter passed to that flow is what is from the text input. So the way you attach that is just insert and then action Power Automate. So that's how you hook up the flow to the button. So that is what is happening here. When the button is clicked, it calls this flow with the parameter that is entered on this text input text, and then there is an image here. Right now it's not displayed because there's nothing being set, and what I am doing in that image is I am simply taking a property called image from that image variable. So when the flow returns uh, the response, you can see that it's actually a record, and then there's a property on the record called image. So in order to kind of clearly visualize that, I can open up this monitor. So I'm going to open up monitor on the separate tab, and then I'm going to uh, run the capture function, capture button. I'm going to click the capture button. So I'm going to click the capture button now by pressing Alt, and I'm going to do a mouse click. It's okay. Now it's grayed out, so it's running on the background. All right, so it's come back. The response has come back. Let's check the variables. So because we are capturing the response from the flow in a variable, so you can see it's a record. All right, so it's a record, and if I hover over it, you can see there's a property. There's a property called image on that. That is a base 64. So that's the reason this particular image is using the response always PNG image, so base 64, and then it just use the base 64 string, and then that's how the image is being displayed. So let's now check the monitor. So Firefox, the Power Apps monitor is sort of like Fiddler, so you can use that to see what is happening, what kind of network requests are being sent. So you can see that this particular request was triggered by this particular button click event, and this was the request that was made. And then in the body, you can see that the parameter pass was URL, and then the response has come back from the flow. You can see that as well. So you can see it's a record and it's got image property, and now so it's a table, property. So now that's how the image is being displayed. So this is an end-to-end. So this is the whole solution. So you have a function that is running on a Docker container. That function is being called by a flow, and that flow is used in a Canvas app to display an image. So it's sort of like clearly it's not everything is not baked into one particular solution, one particular product. So it's sort of separated, and that's the power of Power Platform. You have options for both citizen developers as well as pro developers. So function, like the function app is purely code, but the Canvas app and flow is like no code, and they both operate in a synergy, which is really beautiful and is very powerful. So that is what I wanted. That's what I wanted to show on this video. So thank you for watching this. I hope you actually learned um, something new that you could potentially use. Thank you once again. Subscribe to my channel if you find this useful, or you can also visit my blog. I'll post both of these URLs on the notes below.